Good morning and welcome to today's LinkedIn Live, where we're going for our second part in this series, Behind the Agency, with Spencer Gallagher and Pete Hall from Cactus. Morning, gents. How are we?
Morning. Very well.
Morning.
For those that are tuning in live, please do ask your questions as we go. We're really going to focus today's topic on what's holding you back. And Pete and Spencer have worked with hundreds of agencies now, maybe even thousands. I mean, the Agency Nomics group has got over 1,000 members, so thousands of agencies. And so today we're going to find out what it is that those agencies have got in common and what's holding those agencies back. And so, Pete, without further ado, I'm going to come to you first, because for us growing our agency, one of the most common things, and I guess many agencies will be able to relate, is cash flow. Do you have any advice on dealing with cash flow issues while you're trying to pursue that journey of growth?
Yeah, I mean, how long have we got? You said it was an hour for the whole thing today. So probably just talk for an hour on cash flow. It's definitely my specialist chosen subject when it comes to agency growth. But you're dead right. You know, agencies of all sizes can suffer from cash flow issues. It's not just the small ones, it's the larger ones too. And for me, it comes down to a few different areas. So I think, the starting point really is just the simple stuff. It's, if you're going to do some work for someone, make sure you're not giving them crazy payment terms. Don't just agree to the 60-day terms because you need the business. You need to say, look, we're payment on receipt, or we're 7 days or 14 days. You're setting an expectation that you want to be paid quickly. And then it's about, being paid regularly through a project. I regularly, I'm in a few WhatsApp groups with agency owners who ask questions. And there was one in there the other day where the agency were offered 100% at the end on 90-day terms or something. It's like, I mean, who would agree to that? It's just crazy. You want to be getting some at the beginning, maybe 25%, 30%, some in the middle, 30%, some at the end. And then there's a compromise. You're holding back a little bit on project income for clients who say, well, you're going to give us stuff, but what if there's bugs or changes or fixes? Let's hold back a little bit of retention. And if you're a monthly recurring revenue business, invoice at the beginning of the month in advance and make sure you collect the money up front. If you can use direct debit, I know it's not always possible, but try using something like that. And then it's about collecting the money. So you've got your invoicing sorted. Have a credit control process. Have someone to do the credit control and keep it regular. Don't just send out the invoices and think that you'll just get paid, because in the majority of cases, people will, inadvertently not pay you, or take the Michael, to use a phrase. And then the other thing is mapping out how the cash flow looks. And again, this is probably not possible for all agencies. It depends on where you are in the growth stages in terms of the resource you've got. But having someone to manage a cash flow document that kind of maps out the next 3 months is absolutely the key. And I think is it right to do a little plug on here?
Yeah, of course you can. Yeah.
Got some training courses on this stuff, and I've done a cash flow training course on this. Worth checking out. But it's got the simple stuff in there. It's got a cash flow document template, which is pretty key. The instructions to use it, etc. But it's nice and simple, a spreadsheet. And I always joke in my decks when I present on cash flow, if you're allergic to spreadsheets, there are bits of software that you can plug in. They're not as good as doing it on a spreadsheet, but it gives you that halfway house between where, knowing where you should be and not knowing at all. And the last thing is probably about bank facilities. So a lot of people think that having some kind of bank facility or debt in the business is a bad thing. But if you look at it in the fact that, I'll just take £1 million turnover agency, for example, if its customers are paying on 45 days, it's probably owed £175,000, £200,000 at any given point, which is a huge chunk of money, especially when the business overheads at that point are probably £70,000, £80,000 a month. So it's sensible to have some bank facilities to almost advance the cash that you're owed from customers at that point. Most of the banks will offer a facility of some description. It depends how much security you want to give and how much admin you want to go into, but most banks will lend against the debtor book to be able to fund cash flow as you grow.
Pete, perfect. What a start. Spencer, I'm going to come to you next. And the topic here is around niching. I think we've really taken our scale and growth to the next level the second we decided to focus and not try and be everything to everybody. But I dare say, having met and talked and worked with so many agencies, you'll have a good opinion on niching.
Yeah, and actually, just before I do answer that question, just to say on Pete's training course, don't underestimate how much you can still learn about cash flow. Like when I went through the course with him, I actually did a little bit of a Q&A during it.
Oh, that's the best bit.
I mean, like there's so many nuggets of wisdom that we learned over maybe 10, 15, 20 years that you can do to help improve your cash flow. I mean, Pete hasn't touched on it now, but he just said, oh yeah, get the collection right. But his system for collecting cash is really, really good. It's a process that you take people down to get your money quicker. And it's so clever. And it's like, I almost feel like it should be compulsory for any agency owner in the world who is basically taking on the title of setting up an agency does Pete's cash flow course, right? Because I might even lobby the government for it, because it's the one thing that keeps us agency owners up at night. It really is. And so, track down that course, find it.
Just quickly, where can they find the course? How do they get easy access to it?
If you go to thecactus.academy,
yeah,
it's in there basically. Or if you're in the community, just go into the training section.
Perfect.
And so let's come back to the question about niching. And I really welcome Peter's opinion on this as well, because I'm starting to rant a little bit about niching, because you have to, if you have a little bit of empathy with me, I get people ringing me up all the time who've got agencies who are struggling, and and I did a call last week and with an agency in the States, and he said, I've niched my services down and the sector down, and I've still got no business coming in. And I think that I would honestly say that the most common conversation I have with people is, I've listened to all the so-called experts out there telling me I should niche, but the business hasn't got any bigger. I haven't grown any faster. And so they think that there is no silver bullet, right? Now, what am I saying? Am I saying niching is a bad thing? I'm not. But what I'm saying to you is some of the fastest, most successful, best agencies Pete and I have ever worked with do not have a niche sector. Okay, I want to make that really clear. They do not have a niche sector. Okay, however, they all have one thing in common, which is they either have a niche service, so what they sell, because a lot of agencies, when we're small, we do tend to sort of become fully an integrated agency by the time we're 500,000, selling 28. So I think you have to niche what you sell. Yeah, let's get this really straight. Niche what you sell. And if you don't niche what you sell, you have to be world class at positioning what you do, the problems that you solve in a concise manner. Okay, which means the right message to the right person at the right time and the right case study, so that they're not confused. Because I was on a walk and talk a couple of weeks ago with an agency owner, and even he jokes about it. So if he's listening, he'll know who he is. So I said, what is it your agency does? And I think after like 20 minutes, I got confused and just said, I actually don't know what you do, So just one thing would really help. But let's talk about niching in terms of sectors, There's a lot of people saying it's really important to niche in a sector. Well, it wasn't very important in 2008 if you niched in financial services, or you've niched in automotive, or in 2020 if you niched in live events, or you niched in hospitality, or you niched in restaurants. Well, that wasn't a very smart move, was it? And so the problem with niching is you can become very vulnerable to going out of business, and also your sector you're working in can get really flooded. It can get over commoditized. So, our strategy has always been, niche the service and then look at who you're selling to. Maybe pick several sectors, look at your best case studies. Okay. Now, of course, your marketing goes a lot further if you just push the marketing into one area. That's a given. Okay. But what probably is the best solution is pick a niche. Let's say sport. Last year would have been a good example of this. And we worked in sport too. We did sports equipment. We did, sports organizations, individuals. We did, the periphery was quite wide. We did health and fitness. So supplements, look at the broader sector, because actually a lot of people last year had to expand on what they did to cater for that. Yeah. And I just think if you're already doing that, the ecosystem will still feed off each other because there is a commonality. So again, if you pick fintech as an example. You might say, well, I'm going to focus on banking, mortgages, insurances. Now, you might find within those periphery of services, there are some areas that you get a lot of business from, because actually when you work in the mortgage space, there's a big demand for what you do in it. But I would always hedge. I would always, just make sure that you do have that periphery. I don't think Saatchi have a niche sector today. I don't think Publicis have a niche sector. I mean, pick some other big agencies. There's not many that have niche sectors, but you all know the problem that they solve and how well they do it. Yeah.
Perfect. But my next topic, gents, is about getting people around you that are better than yourself or that can help you on your journey. And I'm just going to give a little plug here for Abby, who, as we're talking, has already put in the Cactus Academy link into the LinkedIn chat, so you can all see it and access it for those listening. But when do you, as an agency owner, know that time to get someone in that can just sweep up behind you and make sure that you're delivering on everything that you say?
And boy, does she sweep up behind us.
Massive like that.
Yeah.
At what point as an agency do you need an EA, a PA, some support?
I mean, it's not Peter Grace. The moment you feel overwhelmed, I think, I remember Pete. Do you remember me coming to you going, I can't do this anymore. I'm just overwhelmed. I've got so much to do. I was sweating the small stuff. I was not being productive because I just had, I spent hours trying to get people in the bloody diary, and 4 or 5 times backwards and forwards. It's just a waste of time. And then you've got sales quotes coming in and you can't get to the new business because basically you're, I don't know, trying to set an appointment up with someone who wants to talk to you, who's just particularly tenacious and is emailing you 5 times a day to make it happen, So I think, I hit that point probably before Pete did, because Pete's probably a little bit more organized than I am. But actually, I think for most agency owners, I think the moment you started to work evenings and weekends is the moment you should be writing down what it is that you're doing in your day. I mean, there's a great article on my LinkedIn that I wrote around, you remember the one around basically making sure that, if you are let's pick a number, if you are a £1 million a year agency, to achieve that number, it's 20 days in the month, you've got to be doing £4,000 a day. So as an owner, that's how much money you need coming into the business. So let's do the easy maths. If you're a £500,000 agency, your day rate is £2,000 a day. That's what you've got to bring in. So any task, under £2,000 day rate needs to be delegated to somebody else. Now, £2,000 day rate is sales, culture, leadership. We talked about these things last time, vision, but actually, managing your diary, organizing events, or what are the other things? Doing finances, Pete will say, but how many owners, Pete, do we meet are just stuck in the bookkeeping?
It's a surprising amount. I mean, I remember going into a £1.2 million search agency, and the owner spent 6 hours of his 8-hour days in spreadsheets.
Yeah, I mean, chasing debts, like all those things.
I've got any leads.
Yeah.
So, guys, we will park the Abbey Appreciation Society for one moment, and I can see some love coming in on the comments as well. We're going to just shout out to Laura that's joining us this morning. Morning, Laura. Great to see you. Matt O'Connor's got a question for us, chaps, so we'll come to that one next. He says, is there a point in the growth of your agency where you should or shouldn't niche, e.g. greater than 500K don't niche, or should you do this from the start?
I think the reality is I was a Deloitte Tech Fast 50 agency. I didn't niche until I probably hit around 1 million. I got one good case study. I obviously, it was in sport. I love sport. And actually, in the next quarter, I think I won a gaming. In fact, gaming came into my sport and gaming. So I won gaming, and I won and then actually I'd always niched a little in the early days, a little bit in e-commerce. Like I'd always had a bit of I had a niche. I had a few case studies in e-commerce. And so for me, I find a lot of people just keep going until they find something that they love. And they go, do you know what? I love Shopify. Actually, I enjoy it. I know a lot about it. I'm going to, and I love it when I do Shopify inside, Nathan, what do you do inside retail? Because actually I'm quite passionate about retail as well. And then, and then what happens is you might then get to a point where you feel, well, actually, you know what? I quite like doing, direct to consumer as well, and you might expand from retail to direct to consumer, and you end up kind of, expanding really in line with the demands for the level that you're at. I mean, and just to be really clear here, I would say that from 1 to 3, 4 million, we were known for sports. Yet my biggest client was BlackBerry, who back in the day, before we had iPhones, we all had BlackBerries, and Technicolor. And so, at 5, 6 million in billings, we didn't, that all of a sudden the niche had sort of separated out again. But, I think so. I try to make the point here that actually, I think as you get bigger, you do tend to create, we create something called pods in our structures. And it's quite easy to have a different pod focusing on different sector. And then, by the way, there's the other challenge as well, isn't there, Pete, about niching when then you stop being able to win anybody else because it's competitive. So if you niche on consumer electronics like we did, and we had BlackBerry, they wouldn't let us work with Nokia and Microsoft.
Well, and it was the same with the football clubs when we acted for them. What was it? We won Liverpool, and they said nobody else in the Granada television region, so we couldn't have Man City, Man United, anybody like that. So, it becomes very difficult. From my perspective, I think that, and I'm not saying this doesn't work for everyone, but in the majority of cases, I think it'd be very difficult to niche from an early stage agency startup. I think you've got to do a bit of that. If you think about most agencies when they start up, where are they going to get their leads from? The people they know, their network, friends, family, local business networking events. And you can't turn up at those places and just say, I just look after builders, because you're going to say, well, I need to look after retail. And, a friend comes to you with an e-commerce website and you need to pay the bills that month. You're going to say, oh, no, thanks, because I just niche in doing builders' websites. You're not, are you? So I think Spencer's right. When you get to a certain point, there'll be a natural fit. And you look at your portfolio, you'll say, I've got 2 or 3 case studies here, 2 or 3 over here. And there are some natural sectors, forming, but it's about, doing what you love. And you might just want to ignore my advice completely and say, no, actually, I like just working in one space. Go and do it.
Yeah. So there is some. So just one thing I'd say on what Pete said, that I think there is, it is a brave thing to say, no, I just do this one thing. And inevitably, when you do that, there are cases when suddenly law of attraction, you end up sort of attracting in more people wanting that. Saying no in those situations can work. However, we'll tell you, we work with a hyper specialist agency, very niche service, niche sector. And they've just won a technology account worth £500,000. Did they turn it away? No. Are they going to promote it on their website? No. But at the end of the day, they've got a really big wage bill. And actually, it'd be, in a way, is a little bit irresponsible, to probably turn away something that they're more than capable of delivering just because it doesn't fit in their niche. So I'm just trying to be pragmatic here. I think, I know the arguments from everybody to say, niche is better, but I'm just telling you, it's not the Holy Grail. Yeah, it is not.
Perfect, gents. Thank you, Matt. I hope that's helped. Let us know if you have any further questions on that. Morning, Peter. Good to see you. Laura, I'll come to your question shortly. But Pete, I want to come back to you here around hiring based on experience. And actually, the last couple of months, our agency has really skyrocketed the second we brought in people that have been there, seen it, and done it within agency. So 2 account directors that have come into the business, both been in agencies 10 plus years. Not only have they brought in some commercial reality, and us as founders, we're always bending over backwards and saying, oh, okay, well, we'll do it. But these girls are like, no, this is how we do it. This is how we've done it before. They're much firmer, and it's been a real revelation for us. At what point can people start hiring with experience? And at what point did you guys start hiring those that weren't maybe trainees or juniors or apprentices, but you did take that leap of faith and go, you know what, I'm gonna pay a bit more, but I'm gonna get someone that comes with experience and can bring fresh ideas into the business?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think the first thing, it starts with mapping out in terms of what the structures look like ongoing. I think that's something that we're always very good at. We'd look at, we might have been at $1 million turnover and we say, well, what do we look like at $1.2 million or $1.5 million? And then we start to build a plan about the people that we needed in the business. And we were always I felt we were always kind of one step ahead. I didn't understand it in the early days when Spencer was always interviewing like 6, 7 o'clock at night at the office. And I'd be like, hey, who are we hiring for? He's like, I'm not hiring now. I'm just having conversations, building a talent pipeline. 3-4 months time, we're going to need these people. And I started to get it when we were growing, because suddenly we had these people that we could say, right, now we need an account director. We've won this account. We need someone who's got experience in X service or Y sector. And those people would be there. And, hiring and again, this always comes down to money a little bit, but you've got to hire the best people that you can afford. They've got to be better than you. You know, when you're a small agency founder and you're the guy that's or girl that's dealing with all of the clients, for example, and you're struggling to grow because you're effectively doing an account director role yourself, bring in an account manager or director that's better than you to free up your time to grow and, you know, go and work on the things you love, which might be new business. It might be building a fantastic culture or organization. So I think, you know, for me, it comes down to planning. I think you can't just arrive at a point in the business's life cycle and suddenly go, what do we need now? If you're growing like you are, Nathan, you'll probably know what your next 2-3 hires are, and you've already mapped that out. So you can start looking ahead of the game and building up a good pipeline of talent for that role.
And building on that, I mean, Spencer's known for building phenomenal sales pipelines, but actually recruitment, Spencer, the recruitment pipeline is something that's often overlooked. What was your process for building a recruitment pipeline? Because for us, we've struggled to say, look, we need you, but it's going to be in 3-4 months. So they're looking, but they're looking now. And I'm trying to say to them, we would love you to be part of the Quickfire journey, but we're just going to keep you warm for a few months.
Yeah. Well, maybe it's not a few months, maybe it's a few years. I mean, maybe that's too short. I mean, I would say, first of all, recruitment right now in the UK, July 2021, is definitely a challenge because, we've got a mass exodus of people post-pandemic. We've also got a massive growth in both agency sector and tech sectors, which people can converge and cross over, especially in dev side of things. So the reality is, it is a challenge now. We've seen these challenges before. I think 2013 was another time when the economy started to pick up again, and they even going back into 2003 after the dot-com crash, where basically, no one worked in digital in 2002-3 because it was a joke to work in the internet. So that's the time when Pete, is referring to with me. So I learned that lesson many, many years ago, right? The experience. And so probably today, there's 3 things you need to do. Number one, building your personal brand is not just about attracting sales. It's about attracting talent. Anyone we work with that has a very strong external personal brand, and I mean, pretty significantly external personal brand, and they don't have to be an extrovert with it. I'm just saying, someone who's out there talking a lot and is then using it to say, we're hiring. Those people have not got recruitment challenges, in my experience. I mean, 9 out of 10 are getting all the candidates. And in fact, they're getting more of the candidates with the other people, the owners who are hiding behind their computers doing credit control. So I think, first of all, you've got to do that. The second thing that you have to do is you have to, again, when you look at the good use of your time, it may be a good use of your time to hire in a part-time talent manager. And it might be that if you are, if you've got to find 3 roles in the next 12 months, that's potentially, 15 interviews. You might have to get a long list of 100 candidates to get to that point. It's a lot of work. When you backtrack, then you've got all the number of interviews you're going to do as well, like in terms of through the process. I mean, we've got, I would say, the agencies where we have brought in a talent manager, or we've got a part-time talent manager, or one of the founders is a talent manager. Those guys are also not struggling for hiring either, because it's getting an extraordinarily large amount of focus. And then the last thing is that I call it the Robin Grant method, although it was a Spencer Gallagher method. But I think Robin Grant was the person who set up We Are Social. Coming out of the last downturn when social media exploded, and they just weren't like with me with digital back in 2003. There just wasn't enough people in social media at that point. And so he was famous for going around having cups of teas and coffees with all his competitors' staff and anyone working in the industry. And he would say, look, what's your career plan? What do you want in the future? And I think, Nathan, that's the question you've got to ask, is not today, are we going to take you on the next few months? It's probably more going to be around lives. What is it you want in life? What's a dream job? Who's your dream client? And you keep meeting people, asking those questions and remembering them, because ultimately at some stage in the future, you're going to go back and say, I remember you said that you would love to work with Nike. Well, we've just won Nike. We're building their Shopify site for them, and we'd love you to come in and be their account manager. It's those things that are gonna help you attract talent and draw people away. I mean, we had it yesterday, didn't we, Pete? Someone left to go and work in one of the employees because they wanted to go to a sector that they they've always wanted to work in.
Yeah. And the last sort of 18 months has made them reassess their career goals, which is not uncommon. I think I would add to what you said here. It's about, what is growing an agency or any business about, really. It's about building a pipeline of leads, and it's build a pipeline of talent. You need sales, and you need people to deliver the sales. And I think the second part of that is overlooked. And in the book, we call it ABR, always be recruiting. So it doesn't mean to say necessarily hiring, but recruiting is, I often say to people, well, let's look at your business. You've got 25 people. You've probably got 6 or 7 different roles in the business. You've probably got a developer, a designer, you've got an account manager, project manager. Just all the time, advertise for all of those roles and just get the CVs coming in. Sometime, you might get someone that comes in, you think, I absolutely have to have that person on my team. And it might not be the right time. And you might have to use some of the techniques to keep them warm. Or you might think, actually, we're growing, we're making good profits, so we've got some reserves. We're gonna take the plunge and hire that person.
I think it's also just worth adding as well. When I was younger and I was in my career, working in retail, I had 2 headhunters that literally would ring me up every 3 months, seeing how I was, checking in on me. I wanted to know where I want to go next. And I didn't leave a job, I think, in under 2 or 3 years. Each one was quite a long time, but they were almost career managing me. And I think don't be afraid to just say to me, look, if you get a job, Nathan, if you get a job next 3 months, so be it. But at some stage, I'd like to have you in with us for the journey we're going on. And, you're not going to get everyone that way. You are going to miss out, but we always share the story about Simon Evans, who now is actually owner of his own agency, and how I kept him on the back burner for about 6 to 8 months going, I want you, don't get another job. I'm going to give me the budget soon and you're definitely going to work for us. And it did take about 6 to 8 months, and he did wait. And I'm hopefully he didn't regret it, because he got to work with some amazing brands as a result. So
chaps, I've got, as expected, thousands of questions coming in now. Pete, going to come to you next. Metrics around KPIs. One thing our agency, again, another catalyst for our growth and scale, was starting to hit the numbers, but we only started hitting the numbers when we set the numbers and we had the KPIs in place. Yeah. If you were to choose 3 agency KPIs to help you scale, what are those 3 KPIs going to be?
Number 1 is the wage cost to GP ratio. So to explain quickly what gross profit is, it's the sales you make less any direct costs of delivering those sales, but not salaries. And dividing the wages over that number, you don't want to be any more than 70% of the absolute maximum. And the benchmark we set is 60 to 65%. As wages are the biggest cost in the business, if you can manage that metric at all times, there's a much smaller chance of the agency failing by having no cash. The amount of agencies we go in and we see, we do the numbers all the time. The other one metric is, fees per head in the business. 70 to 75,000 is probably the common mark. So if you're a million in fees, you've probably got 16, 17 people. So we can look at the size agency from the number of people it's got and work out where its revenue should be. So often when we have calls with people and they say, we're 15 staff, and we go, you're probably about to break through the million then in the next, 3 to 6 months. I'm like, how did you know that? So some of the metrics are fairly common. I think for me, the last one is probably quite surprising because it's not too financy, but the value of the weighted pipeline. That for me, sitting in a number of sales meetings that I've sat over the years has been invaluable to kind of think about, well, okay, with the pipelines here versus our revenue, I know that we'll win X% of that, which will mean that the revenue looks like this, and we need Y number of people.
Pete, you just said weighted pipeline there. What do you mean by weighted pipeline for those that perhaps haven't heard that term before?
Okay, that's a good point. So let's say you've got a £10,000 opportunity in the pipeline, and we typically measure things by gut feels. So something that, if there's 4 of you in the pitch, you might put, and you've all got equal chance, it might be a 25% gut feel, for example, times the value of the opportunity by the percentage gut feel, you get the weighted amount. So in that case, it would be 2,500.
Perfect. Thank you. Spencer, anything to add to those in terms of agency metrics that you think are massively important as you're scaling?
Yeah, I mean, I would probably swap out the weighted pipeline one. I mean, Pete would definitely choose that one because he grows business from the numbers. For me, it's about activity. you know, benchmarking your activity. Every single agency has a good month, then a bad month, because you get busy and then you get focused on delivery. Then you have to get back out and focus on lead generation again. And the reality is that the agencies that are able to consistently maintain a level of activity eventually hit a flywheel, a tipping point, momentum, whatever the word is, a flow state where all of a sudden the business starts to just motor. But the ones that start, you know, new business activity, lead generation activity, they're the ones that just constantly are in the grind and stuck in the hamster wheel. Yeah. Well, it jammed, not even moving.
To add on the KPIs and the metrics, I often get asked that question, Nathan. You know, when we go into new clients, we do workshops, and they say, "What are the best ones?" Well, reality is two things. Number one, there's about 25 different examples of metrics and KPIs in our book, so that's a good starting point. But the thing I always do is I look around the room at a group of founders or a leadership team, and I say, "There's someone in finance, there's someone in sales, someone in marketing, someone in people, someone looks after culture, someone looks after delivery." Okay, so there's always different seats in terms of, you know, the agency's kind of growth journey. Each of those people owning those seats is going to have, when they wake up in the morning, there's going to be 3 numbers on their mind that they care about. So it's taking those 3 numbers from each of those people. And if you capture that, then you've got the most important metrics in the business. There'll be some crossover. And when I've seen this in the past, you know, people start a big long list of 15. And then, you know, 3 to 6 months down the line, they've just got 10 numbers that they care about in the business. And the way that I ask the question generally is, if you've been on sabbatical for 3 months, Nathan, you came back in the business, what are the first 3 numbers you'd ask about?
Probably profit, volume of sales, and I don't know, maybe turnover. Something like that.
So those are your kind of key numbers that keep you awake. But if I asked Martin, who's more delivery focused, he'd probably start talking about, you know, fees per head, you know, pipeline of people coming up, maybe billability, chargeability, stuff like that. So, you know, you can see everyone has a slightly different take on what's important to them.
Yeah, spot on. Spencer, I'm coming to you next in terms of moving away from selling on relationship. And this is something I guess that you may have fallen foul of or maybe not, but certainly for many agencies listening today, they're the ones doing the sales. Naturally, the business owner or founder ends up getting involved in new business, but then all of a sudden they try to scale the agency but can't get themselves out of it, because the second something goes wrong, it comes straight back to them because they've sold on the basis of relationship rather than selling in the agency itself. What pointers would you give to those people that need to move away from selling on relationship, or will they ever move away? Maybe that's just how it is.
Yeah, it's not. It was an interesting article I shared on LinkedIn that I read was in April's Harvard Business Review, where it did a 5-year study of business leaders and their role within sales. And the leaders that were more active in sales and client management actually grew by a significantly increased amount compared with those who just basically tried to bury their head in the sand about it, right? In fact, there were negative growth from the people where they didn't do it. So it is important, okay? But the reality is that just because you are involved in a relationship sale, or you are in some way contributing towards the trust that's needed for that client to choose your agency, it doesn't mean you have to manage their work as well. And I think the transition for me was this. I was going in, probably like many people will recognize this, and maybe some won't, but I think a majority would. You know, sub 1 million turnover, I was going in with my team presenting, and and probably at times it was probably a bit too much the Spencer Gallagher show, right? That's the truth. I was passionate about technology, about internet, about digital. I knew a lot about commerciality. I could bring the two together, and I could make anyone feel like we were going to solve their problems. Now, the reality was, as you rightly said, when we then won the business, they all wanted me to work on their projects. Yeah. And actually, as you scale, 2 things happen. The first thing is you learn that actually you've got people in the business better than you, because you are now recruiting people better than you, and that you are the best person in the business to do everything. And second of all, actually you start to communicate smarter. So it went then from me saying, "Hi there, I'm the founder of the business. I'm here today because you're a really important client." But in reality, the team here are much better at doing work than I am. So when it comes to actually delivering, I'm going to hand over to them now. And then they would do the pitch and I would take the back seat, but I would show that client that I was there because we wanted the business, and also because I might have had an element of thought leadership to me. Like they might have seen what I've said, or they've been recommended to me even, I still was able to sort of, to coin a phrase, sprinkle magic dust over the, be there, but not be completely bought in. And actually, as we scaled, there's actually a funny story, because when we did sell the business, they actually rang up and spoke to all the customers, and they said, "Oh, how do you find working with Spencer Gallagher?" And they all went, "Who? Oh, yeah, I met him at the pitch, but I really work with these people." And that was almost, I remember turning around to Pete saying, I managed to do it. I managed to be able to, in a pitch, step back, not oversell, and by the way, consciously, I think, most founders who are involved in new business, they do have to realize that, you are setting your team up for a fail. If you go in and you sell the world, no one's ever going to meet the expectations. So lower, your comms, your expectations, the things that you believe or want your agency to do for them, and actually get the team to communicate what they will deliver. And then you're more likely to under-promise and over-deliver, not the other way around. Yeah. So I hopefully that answers the question, but I would say, I think there's too many agencies where the founders have disappeared from the sales process. They don't talk to customers. They don't talk to prospects. They don't demonstrate their thought, ultimately their vision, their thought leadership. And, I heard Stephen Bartlett the other day talking on Clubhouse, saying how, he went into a pitch against Gary Vaynerchuk, and they were both in the pitch. They're both in the pitch, right? He was in one, he was in the other. And, was it one of the prospects even asked him for his autograph, And so the reality is that actually sometimes the owner can carry, a lot of people working in big organizations, they want to work with business owners. We don't have to work with them day to day, but they want to know that, they know that person. Yeah. So does that make sense, Nathan, what I've said?
Yeah, no, that's bang on. Thank you. Pete, I've had another question come in here about mergers and acquisition, and we do a lot of talking, and there's a lot of content about getting to 1 million and the £1 million hump. But actually, what's the model for the 1 to 2 million cycle? Is that the point where we start to look at M&A and how we can acquire and how we can maybe take on another client's books, or what is the way to get to 1 to 2 as efficiently as possible?
Potentially, it could be a way. I mean, for me, I would typically say that the way to get from 1 to 2 million is to start. You spoke about it earlier about, when we were talking about the Abbey example and us getting, as founders, freeing ourselves up to do more working on the business. I mean, between 1 and 2 million is probably a difficult time. So you've got to start recruiting what I call a leadership team. The seats I talked about a minute ago, you probably need a marketing manager in there for sure. You definitely need a finance manager. You're starting to bring in, the pod structure. So you've got a client service team that are looking after clients, perhaps as a talent manager. I think once you've kind of got that team around you, it does create more time to start building up the third pipeline in the business, which is, not the sales pipeline or the talent and culture pipeline, but a pipeline of M&A opportunities. And the same way that you go out and, sell your new business, or you bring in culture, you've got to go and have cups of teas and coffees and drinks with people who are potentially in this situation. There is a way of, perhaps spamming every single agency owner in the country with a letter or a phone call and hiring someone to do it. But the most successful people who've done M&A are name check Simon Harmer and Kevin Davis in this. Two of our clients who've gone on acquisition, trails, have successfully networked their way around, peers locally or within the space that they operate in, and found opportunities, built relationships, and had, brought great businesses into their fold. So, it could be part of the mix, the M&A stuff, but don't underestimate how many frogs you have to kiss to find the prince.
Pete, Spencer, I'm going to come to you shortly. Just a quick shout out to Costas. Great to see you. Jenny Plant, thank you for your kind comments. And Virginia Bray as well. Look forward to seeing you in our next Q group. But Spencer, coming to you around cheating the numbers. And actually, there's a piece in here around when it comes to networking, or when it comes to hitting your 50 meaningful conversations, so many people take the easy route and don't make them meaningful. Or if they're networking events, they just go to agency networking as opposed to networking in their niche. What is your advice to people, particularly for us in this case, we're like, actually, Nathan, if you go to an agency lunch, you do that stuff in your sleep, that's not counting as one of your 4 networking events a month. You have to be in a room with people that could buy your service, which in our case would be retailers. How do you make sure that you find those events and do that, as opposed to just cheating to hit the metric to get that buzz of, oh, I've achieved something?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, you know, the end of the day, you know, you have to have the right intention. That, you know, the reason you are trying to build your network ultimately is because you are trying to generate more sales from the right people. But sometimes you do have to meet the wrong people and have a network of the wrong people to get to the right people, you know. And you know, when I won one of my largest clients ever, one of my network knew somebody who sat on the board of that company, and I wanted them to know that we were good people, and I could get a message through. It didn't matter who I knew at the organization. If I hadn't have had a network big enough to be able to find a connection into that organization and help them get more confidence that we were good people from someone who has had a good reputation, it wouldn't have counted. But so I think the first thing is you've got to have the right intention. You've got to know who you're ultimately trying to sell to, but also you mustn't rule out the fact that different people in your network will provide you with different bits of value. You know, I used to mind map my network out, and I'd always find the inner circle. There was one sort of network that was great for finding talent. One was great for finding leads. One was great for kind of business knowledge. And actually, so different people brought different things. The thing that winds me up the most these days, and I'm sure we all get it, you know, is because we see people just selling blatantly, is we are not in a sale. You know, we are an agency, and everyone who's ever heard me speak has heard me say this a gazillion times, but nothing has changed in 50 years. People buy people first. Yeah. Do I like you? Do I trust you? And do you have the capability to deliver the work? But if you want to, you know, become hugely successful within, you know, retail space, and listen, I come from a retail background. I know how busy people are in retail roles in organizations and what the cultures are like there. But it's how do you build a network in that space? And you're not going to do it by ringing up necessarily just telling them what problems you can solve all the time. You have to help them as individuals. You have to make them look good in their job. It's about them, not you. So for me, it would be, you know, I would be thinking very hard around how could I add value to the people that I want to sell to first. When I'm connecting to them, what value can I bring them? Not what can I sell them? And that shift, everyone's got to get sort out. I mean, I've never ever sold Cactus services like outbound. I never reached out to you and saying, I want to work with you, agency. Martin Sorrell, I want to work. I never do that. I might ring Martin Sorrell up and say, hey, listen, I really would love to interview you for my podcast. I really would like to, you know, involve you in some thought leadership I'm doing. What could I do to help your career? You know, like I want to find out how I can help people first. And that's what I do every day. I help agency owners. I help them with their problems. And the more people I help, the more they go, actually, one day I know what you do. I don't have to tell people what I do. They know what I do. So if you start helping out people in retail, solve problems, whatever those problems may well be, or make them look better in their job, inevitably in the end, they're going to come back and go, sorry, what is it you do? Or they'll know what you do and go, actually, I'd like you to try and help me now. Yeah. So with some work. So I think trying to get everyone's head around there. If you go and talk to your customers, which people don't do, I would urge you, Nathan, especially if you haven't done this already, and I'll talk out loud about it, but because, you know, but I would ring up and speak to your target and say, look, I just need 10, 15 minutes of time, you know, to find out what your challenges are. You've got to make it interesting for them to do that. Someone sent me a message saying they'd donate £500 to charity or something if I gave them some time to answer some research questions. But, you know, ask them and say, what's it like for you with agencies? You know, because they'll say to you, most marketing managers in organizations will say, if I actually replied to every agency that cold called me, emailed me, social DM'd me, I would have a full-time job just responding to the agencies. And most agency people, they're like, which new business call company can I use to try and target? Do you know what I mean? Like, there are better, smarter, cooler ways to get business in. And so, you know, I'm not saying all these things don't have their moments, they do, but the reality is, how can you how can you build connections and friendships and trusted partnerships potentially with these people? In the first case, how can you work on the chemistry? And then before you start demonstrating what you can do and what problem you can solve.
Pete, I'm going to come to you now around a question around a finance team and financial controllers and FDs. And at what point is there a Holy Grail number that says you've hit this number, now's time for the financial director, or now's time for a financial controller, or now's time to bring bookkeeping away from externally and bring it internally, etc.?
Yeah, I mean, the simple one to answer is the bookkeeping. I mean, it's £25 to £30 an hour job. And, that should be done from day one. Someone external taking that away from the business and having that done professionally. It's one less thing for you to worry about. In terms of what I would call the finance manager role, most of the agencies we work with are kind of looking for someone, perhaps 3 days a week from about 500,000-600,000 turnover, perhaps 750 at a push. Just someone to come in and take over all of the finance activities within the business. And at that level of activity, you think about a number of transactions that go on, invoices, etc. It's well worth having that person in the business. A lot of people don't see the value in it. They think, well, maybe we can outsource, but these people can also get involved in commercials. They often understand contracts, can help with negotiations, deal with suppliers. Some of them know about HR, legislation, etc. So there's lots more value to be had. In terms of the FD role, I think, a full-time FD these days is probably something that's quite rare unless the agency's kind of, £5-6 million plus in revenues and there's a finance team. But a lot of agencies now will think about taking on a part-time FD, with 1, 2, 3 days a month, something like that, from about 1.5 million to add some more strategic value to the figures and work with the finance manager and mentor them and bring them on as well. I mean, from my perspective, I'm kind of working as a CFO, sat on agency boards, kind of the level beyond an FD. But one of the biggest joys I get from my role is actually mentoring people and taking, finance people in their roles and showing them the light in some cases, because sometimes these people have been, classically trained or they've worked in firm of accountants and there's one kind of blinkered way to do it. And for me, I'd like to, show them there are other ways to do things, which is always fun.
Spencer, another catalyst for our growth in particular has been a lot around personal brand. Now, I know you guys are big advocates of growing personal brands, and I know that you're working with some people at the moment. From your point of view, at what point does personal brand start? Is it from the outset? Is it when you hit a certain number? And actually, if you were to share 2 tips to building a personal brand, what would it be?
Well, I think, as an agency leader, this isn't a new thing. Let's be really clear. David Ogilvy or Maurice and Charles Saatchi, back in the day, they all they had points of view. They had an opinion, and they would share that. Whether it be about their expertise, about their business, they may write books, they would speak on stage. These things have been happening for many, many years, But during the noughties, there's definitely a period that I recognise where a lot of business owners sort of really hid more away. They weren't as vocal. They weren't as, they were sort of very much working behind the scenes, maybe with closed networks. It was less of a kind of, I think we lost this art of kind of communicating externally. And actually, since probably 2008-9, I guess, when all of a sudden content became much more important when it came to search recognition. And, up until that point, if the longer you'd had a website, the higher you performed on the internet, all of a sudden that got replaced by the time. And the current content was, we look at the pandemic last year, right? And there was another shift on the whole world moving online. So it's very hard now to sort of raise yourself, to lift yourself up above the noise as an agency leader and try and get some market share. So to answer the question quickly, obviously the importance of it is more important than ever. How you do it, well, I think I'm going to steal something from Steve Richards at Jago. He says, "You be you," and I think you be you is the most important thing here, because I'm not a Gary Vaynerchuk, and I'm certainly not a Stephen Bartlett. He's much younger, better looking, and he wears better hats. But I do have some knowledge and some experience and some expertise around a certain area. And I was guilty in 2017. All I did on LinkedIn was I liked other people's posts and I shared them. I never wrote anything unique. You can go back and have a look. Up to 2017, I didn't do anything. And I realized, in fact, it was James Potter, the LinkedIn trainer, who got introduced to me by Marcus, who made me realize, he sort of went, well, I've looked at you on LinkedIn and you don't really have a lot to say. Do you actually know anything? You know, and I realized that I wasn't really sharing the knowledge. And I think Gary Vaynerchuk used to say, talk about the process. So I started myself on this journey. Now, this is answering the question, but to say that the journey starts by you testing and doing things yourself and finding what you love, what you hate, and what you fear, you know, and you learn a lot about yourself. And I think, you know, that learning about yourself, because some people are too scared. I mean, it takes me an hour to write a LinkedIn post. You know, it takes me 4 times to check it for spelling mistakes. It still contains spelling mistakes when I post it. And maybe I delete 1 in 10 because I'm just not happy with it once it goes up. That's the reality. I'm okay public speaking. I don't mind doing it. I'm not sure I want to do arenas, but I don't mind speaking to small groups. So I know my limitations. And so I've curated a way for me to be able to talk about what I know. Now, that gets you so far if you've got a little bit to start with. But if you don't know who you are and what you should talk about, and then I think you have to make an investment, or you get to a point like me in particular, where I felt, and Peter probably said the same, where we were doing bits ourselves, but we needed to kind of take it to the next level. And so we made the investment with Jago to invest in them coming up with a proper strategy. And, you know, I didn't really feel like I needed the strategy, but having been through the process, it's been amazing. Like, not only have I now understood more about my superpowers and where I can really impact other people the most and where I should focus, and actually it's given me more confidence. And look, I suffer from imposter syndrome no less than anybody else does, right? We all do. You know, it's just a human thing. But Pete will probably explain better, because Pete isn't a natural speaker and a massive, you know, more introverted person. But the personal brand process for you, Pete, has been real game changer.
Yeah, it has been game changing. And you're right. You know, some people know what they want to say, and you know, and some people struggle to get it out. I mean, I was definitely one of those people where, you know, lacking confidence in terms of posting. I have suffered from, you know, imposter syndrome. It's not something I've verbalized. It's just something I've realized that I've had over the years, and that I don't necessarily have the confidence to have opinions. But where Jago have helped me is really understanding me as a person. At the end of the first part of the process, I said to them, you know me better than I know me. And they came out and said, these are your 5 or 6 key strength areas that you should talk about. And that's the stuff has given me real confidence in terms. So that, you know, that's just, you know, from the content that I put out. But from a speaking perspective, I've started small. You know, I think I'm, to blow my own trumpet a little bit, I'm quite good in meetings of 1, 2, 3 people. I think I can hold court quite well in that situation. I've got great confidence, you know, in what I do. But, you know, if you said you've got to go and speak in front of 20 people tomorrow, like you were in one of our mastermind groups, probably surprise you to hear that I don't sleep the night before those things. As I just get, you know, nervous. I think, I don't know why, because I know my subject so well. Sometimes I could do it without the slides, but I think, oh God, something's going to go wrong. Someone's going to find me out. You know, I'm massive imposter, whatever. We just have to build up. I mean, 2 years ago, I spoke in front of 200 people at one of our events. Didn't sleep for a fortnight before. You know, probably spent 5 times as long as I should have done on the deck. But as soon as I did it, I literally ran outside. I was like, fucking yes, like this. Rang my wife, and I was like, oh, I'm so happy I've done this. It was like a massive achievement for me to do it. And I got more from doing it than I would have done definitely from not doing it, from a personal satisfaction perspective of overcoming a challenge, if you like.
Yeah, so the answer quickly is basically either have a go yourself, do it, and then eventually refine it. Or if you're being held back, then find someone to do it for you, Nathan. That's just our advice. And I've worked with, you can imagine, Pete and I've worked with a lot of agencies over the last 20 years. I'm not sure I've come across a better agency than Jago. I mean, their process, Pete, I mean, you'd say the same. I mean, their approach, their methodologies is so good.
It's unbelievable. I mean, I've learned something from them about, you know, packaging up their processes and their techniques, and thought, you know what, we could take some of this away in our business. But it's funny, when we have our board meetings with them, they're always saying, oh, what would you do about this, that, and the other? But I'm sitting there thinking, I'm loving what you're doing already. I need to add some polish to this somehow.
Guys, perfect. We've got about 5 minutes left. Last chance for any other questions from the audience. Great to see Jenny Plant joining us. Ryan from Jago as well has just jumped in as well. Prisco, there's loads of people adding their comments and love for you guys. Now, the last topic for me and the last thing holding many people back, including ourselves, is mindset and confidence. And we just touched a little bit upon it there. But I think of all the topics we've discussed today, the marketing, the hiring, the recruitment, all that good stuff, the final thing holding yourself back is you, right? You just can't get out of your own headspace of what are my friends going to think when this fails? What are other people going to think when I decide that I don't want to do this anymore and I want to take a new industry? Yeah, Laura, please do bring a niching question in. I will happily answer it. Well, I'll ask the guys to answer. I won't. But essentially, guys, mindset, just a little thought from each of you on how we can wrestle with our own mindset to stop holding ourselves back.
I think the bit that when we spoke about niching earlier on, and me saying it's not the silver bullet. The silver bullet is mindset, because whether you niche or not, your mindset is what's going to make you successful. It's not the niching, it's the mindset. That for me is 100% the case. So someone with the wrong mindset and a great niche will never be successful. Someone with a great mindset who doesn't niche will become massively successful. So the mindset, I think was Jim Rohn used to say, you work harder on yourself than you do in your job. I think, for me, one of the best things that actually happened recently, Pete and I did an EQ test actually with the guy as part of the process for the personal branding. Doing an EQ test teaches you a lot about yourself and teaches a lot about how you are. And I think, Steve Bartlett talked a lot recently about the importance of self-awareness. And the bottom line is people with higher EQs go on to be, I think it's like over 80% go on to have more successful outcomes. And so I would be working on my emotional intelligence first. I think we're going to start bringing EQ tests in, aren't we, Pete, at Cactus soon, because I think it helps us understand that self-awareness. But, you have, the reality is that we have these voices in our head, that question and doubt are us, and we have to learn to manage that. So don't hide from it. Learn about it. Learn ways to overcome those voices. There are ways to do it. There is NLP. There's hypnotherapy. There is just reading and educating yourself and finding content that can help you fix that. I mean, we had a client that we worked with who constantly was yo-yoing his emotions. And the reality is that, whenever you see me, I'm normally really, really happy bunny and I'm always really motivated, whatever. But I have down times too. But I don't have maybe more down times than up times, as some people do. So we've had people where we've had to get them to, get external people in to help them, and I think that's the real thing here. It's don't let your mindset rule your life. It's your life. It's you. You need to find ways to manage it and to overcome, those voices in your head. It's a really big subject. I feel a little bit of time pressure now. I've got 2 minutes to go. But
we will talk about it more next time around mindset.
Yeah, we should do. Because, Napoleon Hill, in his famous book Think and Grow Rich, said that most people's biggest success comes one step after the point of failure. But your mindset is how you cope when things go difficult. When you have those bad days, you've got to tell yourself, you've got to have the bad days to appreciate the good days. You've got to have a philosophy that deals with those downtimes, because you have to bounce back. Because the fact is more things do go wrong on an agency journey than go right. So you have to have that resilience and that strength to overcome that. So, yeah, look, it's a massive subject. But I would say, I read all of Peter Drucker's books, and he's the guy that said culture trumped strategy, or eat strategy for breakfast. But in reality, he actually said at the very end, it doesn't matter about anything unless you've got a great mindset. And so one of our clients, just quickly, he had this problem where he was up and down a lot. And I got him to go and listen to Tim Ferriss and Tony Robbins and loads of kind of podcasts from people who are more about changing yourself and also more uplifting. And we saw a massive change in his outlook and his perspective after about 6 months of changing his listening and his reading, and actually, so it can have an impact on you. If you can't surround yourself with, the right people, then surround your reading with the right people. Yeah.
Very good, guys. 1 minute left. Spencer, very good quick question for you. Niching, we're going down this route as we have a multitude of sectors and case studies. How best to identify this on the website? Separate niche specific websites or all on one website? You've got 5 seconds.
There's some great examples over the years of people that cleverly use subdomains for different sectors. I think really, I would probably create clear signposting by sector. Look at some of the big agencies that have multiple sectors, how they do it. Sometimes you need to glue the front page, though, around the services you deliver more than the niche sectors, to help that. But for me, I niched in sport and e-commerce, and I was able to demonstrate a sports e-commerce site on the front page of our website, so I could glue it together. So, but look, I mean, for me, that's a UX design challenge, and I would urge you to find someone who's probably a better expert than me at visualizing. But James Henderson's a great plug. If you ever want anyone to talk to about that, speak to him, because he's really good with agency branding specifically.
Guys, appreciate you're super busy. I know you've got to shoot off shortly. Pete, very quickly, one thing from you on mindset, and then we'll wrap up.
To hold up the sign, what he said. I mean, it's all about the positivity at the end of the day. And the thing that I was nodding like this when Spencer said it was about, the voices in the head. Is sometimes, we're talking to people who've got challenges, and you don't know whether you're talking to the voices in the head that day or the person. And as Spencer said, surround yourself with people you can talk to about this stuff. It's more common in agency owners who are what I call single agency owners, as in they have no business partners, this stuff, than the people who can share the load a little bit. So if you're one of those people that's running a business on your own, just find someone to talk to and get stuff off your chest, rather than bottling it up and having thoughts go round and round and round that just create a negative spiral.
So in summary, folks, there's been huge amounts of thought and wisdom and value offered in the last session of Behind the Agency Part 2. There is another session to come, and I'll share the details of that shortly. But the final pillar to driving growth and to driving scale is around gratitude. And we've given Abby the Abby Appreciation Society, and we've shown her some love. But actually, we personally at Quickfire would never have got this far without the two guys on the screen today, Pete and Spencer. And we talk about it in LinkedIn posts and everything else, but just on behalf of us, gents, a massive, massive thank you for allowing us to live this agency dream. We really appreciate it. It's been great to have you guys on today, and I can't wait to see you for a beer in a couple of weeks' time.
Oh,
thanks all for listening. Take care, and we'll see you all soon.
Thanks, Nathan.
Cheers.